we have to move on now because I want your calls on weight loss jabs. Are NHS rules too strict? From today, GPs can prescribe mounjaro injections. I hope I've said that right. On the NHS, around 29% of the adult population is estimated to be obese, but the rules mean only around 220,000 people will be eligible for the prescriptions. The chairperson of the Royal College of GPs says she welcomes the rollout, but warns that they mustn't be seen as a silver bullet and that we need a bigger focus on prevention. Is she right? Do you think, like Anne Widdecombe did earlier on, that the vast majority of obese people have only got themselves to blame? Or are these jabs a vital tool that should be available to even more people for the price of a prescription? Albie.
Yes, they should be available.
Tell me, do you have personal experience with jabs?
Yes,
We've talked about this before.
We have spoken about it. So I took mounjaro last summer before I went on holiday to Barbados just to lose a few extra pounds. And it does work very well.
This is not a health condition.
This is not a health condition.
Right.
But even if you are slightly overweight, you can get prescribed for mounjaro. And I can tell you these clothes cover up a lot. So you might not outwardly look overweight, but I can assure you my BMI is higher than it should be. And certainly was at the time that I got mounjaro, and that's why I was prescribed it. And I think these weight loss jabs are revolutionary. I don't think anyone has any excuse to be overweight anymore because of these weight loss jabs are available. It literally stops you being hungry. You have to remind yourself to eat. It literally couldn't be easier for people to lose weight by being on these jabs. And that is why I'm so supportive of it being available on the NHS. But I think the criterion that the NHS have picked with which they're going to prescribe people on, I think it's too restrictive. I think you've got to have a number of health conditions before you're considered eligible for this prescription. And I think the whole point where this medication can really work is by stopping people getting to a point where they have obesity-related health conditions. So I think the criteria should be broadened.
We're going to have a closer look at exactly what those rules are. Now, let's get straight back into weight loss jabs. We're asking if the NHS rules are too strict. Get your calls in now. 0207 862 2222. Can't wait to hear from you. Have a look at this. Here we go. These are the rules, the requirements if you want to get a weight loss jab on the prescription. First off, you've got to have a BMI that's over 40. So the BMI is your weight that's then calculated with your height, but it's got to be over 40. Then, that's not enough. You've got to have 4 out of the 5 life-threatening, life-limiting health issues that we've got here. Type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, sleep apnea, or abnormal blood fat. So you've got to have 4 out of those 5. What do you reckon, Suzy? That feels like a pretty high bar for a lot of people, doesn't it?
I think it is quite a high bar. I mean, I do think these weight loss jabs are revolutionary. I do think, they're transforming people's lives in that it can be so difficult to lose weight for a whole lot of reasons. I can also hear that people think sometimes it's a bit of a cheat. But look, it's going to save the NHS a lot of money because, people not having diseases in a serious way, which means they may have to have operations, etc. And I do wonder whether this is a bit too restrictive. I do, because, because I think it could be a bit too restrictive.
Do you think that idea of cheating, do you think that's one that is there behind this argument the whole time? I mean, Anne this morning said it's a matter of personal responsibility. Why aren't you looking after yourself?
Yeah.
Do you think that's all of us have that in the back of our minds to some extent?
I don't know. I kind of see it as like a little bit of grace for people, and I think, sometimes people are struggling with their mental health. Sometimes, people have done everything to try lose weight, and they just haven't been able to. And this is the thing that's going to bring the breakthrough for them. So, I mean, my only concern is that thing of, the kind of unknown of, is something going to come down the line that we discover? Does that make sense? Like in 5 to 10 years' time? Because obviously that's my only bucket here.
You hope concern. That the testing's been done in advance. There's very stringent testing to get them to market in the first place.
Yeah.
But we find out stuff all the time, don't we?
Yeah.
OK, well, listen, thank you so much. I want to now turn to a bit of an expert voice. I'm joined by GP Dr. Sarah Jarvis. Hey, Sarah, good to see you. I'm just wondering how you feel about these rules, whether that is a very high bar, or in fact, do you see a lot of people coming through your surgery who fit that bill perfectly and really need these jabs?
Okay, there aren't that many people who fit that bill perfectly yet, but the rules are going gradually to allow more people to get access to it. What we need to bear in mind, let's think about the figures. The NHS estimates that by the end of 2028, using this staggered rollout, about 220,000 people are going to get access to these drugs through primary care. But that's out of 3.4 million who have a body mass index of at least 35 and have at least one other medical problem that relates to it. So if we allowed all of those to access the drugs straight away, absolutely game over. NHS totally swamped. And unless you are one of the very few people who doesn't have any problem getting hold of your GP, you will realise that GPs are hugely overworked at the moment and really already struggling. If we add this vast amount of work onto them, there is no way that general practice would cope. It would break.
Okay, I mean, there is the process of rolling out the drug. And then there is also the aftercare that goes with that. You can't, presumably, you can't just prescribe this. What is it that you have to then do to make sure that that patient is properly looked after in the months or years afterwards?
And this is exactly the reason that we've been so worried about this huge proliferation of clinics and pharmacies and so on springing up online. Some of them doing it brilliantly, but a lot who aren't providing the advice. So for instance, with mounjaro, tirzepatide, you have to have the dose increased very slowly. You have to be advised about diet and exercise, because if you lose the weight without fundamentally changing your diet and exercise, you're going to lose a lot of muscle as well. Now, on average, in some of the studies, people put on about 2/3 of the weight within a year of stopping the drug. So if you've lost the mixture of muscle and weight and you then put on muscle and fat rather, and you then put on pure fat, 2/3 of it within a year, you're going to be in a worse position than when you started. Also, we see in the real life studies that people don't lose as much weight as they do in the clinical studies. So the average weight loss with mounjaro was about 20-21%. That's really impressive. But in real life, because of the side effects, because people found it difficult to get up to the higher doses, in real life, they only lost about 13% of the weight, so at least a third less. And more than half of them had stopped it after a year, usually because of side effects. So we really need that wraparound care to help people stick with it.
The other thing that springs to mind is that not just aftercare, there's pre-care as well. That a lot of people will think this is a silver bullet, and actually they don't need to do the preventative things like exercise, diet control, all of those things that would stop them needing it in the first place. And that's something GPs genuinely can't offer, because that's down to us. That is down to us, isn't it?
Well, it is, but it's also down to a lot of encouragement and giving them the right advice. I have to say I was absolutely horrified at Anne Widdecombe's comment that this is all down to personal responsibility. It's not. We know that obesity is a chronic disease, and we know that some people are much more prone to putting on weight, and they just have this constant noise, this food noise going on in their heads. Patients who've taken it say it switches off the food noise. For the first time, I can focus on something that isn't food. But again, going back to this idea, once you're on the mounjaro, then more than ever, you're going to need to do the exercise. You're going to need to have enough protein in your diet. You're going to need to reduce your portion size to reduce the side effects. So you really need to have that support beforehand. And nobody comes to me saying, oh, I don't want to lose weight. I like being this weight. Nobody wants to be living with obesity. So they've all tried and they've all failed. So they need to be encouraged to recognise that this on its own is not going to be enough. They're going to be doing themselves a disservice if they just take the drug and don't do the other things like protein, reducing their portion size, and really regular exercise as well.
As we were saying earlier. Thank you so much, Sarah. But as we were saying earlier on, not a silver bullet, not a quick fix by any stretch of the imagination. Thank you so much for your help today, Sarah. Let's get your calls now. Jack's in Berkshire. What do you reckon, Jack? Are these rules too tight? Does it make sense to you? I mean, it sounds like a rollout when it will apply to more people in the longer term.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me on. I very much agree with everything that's just been said in terms of I fear that it will be seen as a quick fix. And I don't think the rules are too strict because, like what was mentioned before, if it's easily or too easily available, it's going to be more pressure on an already struggling system. In my personal view, I think that, like what was said before, the support before and after, I feel like there almost needs to be something in place that is making people create better habits beforehand, rather than just having this jab, like the doctor just mentioned, exercise, diet, all that sort of stuff, all without creating habits, lasting habits that they can do without the jab.
Where does that happen though? Jack? Because we know, getting a GP's appointment at the moment is, for a lot of people, very difficult indeed. What we're talking about is effectively a lifestyle program that most GPs haven't got time to look at right now.
Agreed, and that's pretty much what it would come down to. I work in the health and fitness industry, and fitness and being healthier, etc., doesn't need to be difficult, and I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. Is they have this perception of what fitness needs to look like, but all that might entail is increasing your steps slightly throughout the day. There's the stigma.
Do you think that these jabs should be on the NHS, should be available on prescription at all, Jack?
It's a great question. I think it's definitely going to help, and it's definitely going to help the obesity problem. But I feel like there needs to be more effort from the person involved to really show that they're sort of, worthy is the wrong word, but really willing to put the effort in to actually help themselves. Because
so it feels like a partnership rather than,
Yeah, exactly. Rather than.
Okay, I'm
exactly,
just
rather than.
Thanks for your call, Jack. I want to come back to you, Albie. Did you feel like having the jabs changed your behaviour in any way? Was it that launch pad that you need, that springboard towards, behaving differently, exercising differently, maybe?
Yes, I would say that it did change my behaviour because ultimately, all the jabs do is stop what the doctor called food noise, what we might call feeling hungry all of the time. That's what it does. You still have to eat less. You still have to move more. And if the problem is that people are overweight because they're eating too much and not moving enough, it doesn't solve that problem. It just makes it easier for you to solve. You've still got to make those lifestyle choices in order to get to the result that you want, and also to maintain the results that you get.
It shows you the way. It shows you the mindset you need to be in if you want to carry on at that weight or that lifestyle.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's take another call. Baden's in Nottingham. What do you reckon, Baden? Do you reckon these rules are the right ones for right now if you want to get your hands on this drug?
Hello there. Yeah. No, I don't at the moment. I've been a diabetic for about 8 years now. I've been on medication for 4 years. I suffer from sleep apnea because of the weight. I've lost 2 stone over the past 2 years, maintained a weight of 18 stone, but I've never got any further down from that. I'm tired all the time. My diabetes, my sleep apnea causes me to be tired, causes bad eating habits. In terms of just probably carbohydrates, I've been offered the jab 3 times by my GP, but then it was turned down every time because of financial, and I decided 3 weeks ago to finance it myself. £140 a month. I've been on it 3 weeks. I've lost. I was 18.3 last week, and I'm 17.10 now.
Okay.
My blood sugar.
How many of those 5? How many of those 5 conditions would you say you have? I counted 2 so far. Would you qualify under these rules?
Well, high blood pressure. I've got obviously sleep apnea.
Yep.
Diabetes, cholesterol. They covered the basis of it all, really. And
so I think that was covered by abnormal blood fats. I think I'm not a doctor, but I'd say you've got your 4 there. So you could now go back today, by the sounds of it, if your BMI is over 40, and you tick the boxes.
My BMI is 35. Was 35, so I wouldn't qualify for that.
Okay. But all of these.
So there's.
Sorry, no, just to say it's interesting because obviously, this is something that would be you know, or is now beginning to be really helpful for you and, you know, could really transform your life. And unfortunately, you're just slipping through the cracks there and not getting the support.
This is what I worry about. And thanks for your call, Baden. I worry that actually it could act as a disincentive. You need to get to BMI 40 before you qualify for the drug, which you might not be able to afford otherwise.
But we do know that after the initial phase, which is expected to take 3 years, then it will go down from 40 to 35.
Well, I mean, Baden needs
he needs
Baden
it now.
needs that help right now. And listen, I'm glad it's having the results. I'm sorry it's costing you all that money, Baden, but we wish you the best. Thanks for all of your calls on that. We're going to move.